Publishing for Profit podcast is brought to you by Ghostwriters & Co. Earn more money by publishing better content and learn how to increase your thought leadership so you can build your brand. Head over to ghostwritersandco.com for more information. That's ghostwritersandco.com. And now, your host, Joel Mark Harris.
Hello and welcome to the Publishing for Profit podcast. This is your host, Joel Mark Harris. Today we interview Andre Gress, who is the author of a book called Boone and Jacque, or Jacque if you're French. It is written under the pen name A.G Flitcher. So we talk about the launch of his new book. We talk about his inspiration, creativity, and how he became a writer in the first place. It's a very wide-ranging conversation. We talk a lot about different subjects, and you will definitely enjoy this one. So without further ado, here is Andre. Hi, Andre. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
So I want to start off at your newest release, Boone and Jacque. Can you tell us a little bit about the premise of that novel and what inspired it?
The premise is actually only for the first installment of an urban fantasy series. So Boone and Jacque, Sadleton's Secret is the first volume. And essentially, it's about two boys in a small urban town that uncover a hidden part of that town's history. And when they do, it starts to unravel old history, so it repeats itself. And when it does, slowly but surely, there's a lot of fighting going on in between old nemesis that wanted power as well, and the mayor of the town wants power too, so he cuts a deal with them, and the children are caught in the middle of that battle. So as the series goes on, the children are always in the middle of this absolute power corrupts absolutely kind of threshold. But for the first book, it only focuses on essentially me introducing the readers to the world. There's not a lot of time to kind of sit and get to know the characters. They just have to kind of go through this whole, kind of controlled chaos.
Gotcha. And so what inspired that novel?
Honestly, Stephen King novels, especially It. When I read It, and I had to read that for one of my last creative writing courses for my bachelor degree, and I read that in 7 weeks. And people thought I was insane to read 1,100 pages in that short amount of time. But what Stephen King does that has always inspired me to be a writer is the way he uses tedious detail to really engage the audience, that it doesn't really bore you. Not a lot of writers can do that, where if you write that many pages, usually for the first 300 pages, you might get bored. But he has a way of making everything count, and that's what I tried to do with my writing.
Cool. And for this novel, you wrote under a pen name. Can you tell us why you chose that route?
Honestly, it's because when I did my first two novels under my legal name, I felt like I was still getting to know the craft. And it's not that I'm ashamed of my work or anything, or put myself down all the time, but because I hadn't really studied writing closely at that time, I felt that I needed a fresh start. So when I came up with the pen name, it wasn't me disguising myself. It was me saying, I need a fresh start. I want to start with this book as if it was my first one, so that people understand that I've gone through trial and error to feel like I'm confident enough to say I'm a writer. Where when I first started, I was so new to it and still transitioning from film to novel that my writing came off as very literal, and it was kind of boring to readers, that it was very like, this happens and this happens. It's like, well, what about the characters? What about their feelings and stuff? So that's why I felt that I don't want readers to see me as untrained. So that's why I went with a pen name.
Gotcha. Have you always had a calling to be a writer?
No. When I was in high school, I was really confused on what I wanted. I wanted to be a chef, and then I wanted to be a journalist, and then I wanted to be a director. Um, but what all of those had in common, and that I realized over time, is that they all had to do with creativity. In order to really make something of yourself in any of those domains, you have to be able to stand out. And to me, storytelling is what allows you to do that, especially now with the media system being so broken and fragmented. You can't really make uh, make it to the 1% of writers that can really sell themselves without really trying. And in order to achieve that, you have to already establish yourself in terms of your target audience. No traditional publisher is going to make a contract with you if you have no uh, marketable presence. They see you as an empty face. If you're an empty face, they'll just blow by you like you don't exist. And that's what I'm trying to do here. That's why when I took my business of writing class and we learned about all the different lanes you can start with, self-publishing made the most sense to me because it's a lot of work, which means that you get to control how you come off to people. What is your target audience? So what kind of writer do you want to be? What is your why as an artist? So with all of that work that I'm doing, I'm telling traditional publishers, this is the kind of writer I am. This is the kind of audience that I have. Does this make sense to you? Is this something you would buy into? Because in the end, they want to make money, and obviously I'll get like a small percentage of whatever they make in sales. So I have to really be able to have high numbers. And I can't do that if I don't, establish some kind of clarity.
You mentioned having a why. What's your why?
When I say what is your why, that's a question that my teachers always asked me, or ask all students. And what's really important about that question for any beginning writer is understanding your purpose as a writer, understanding why you want to do this. What is it you want to say to people? Not as a writer, but as a person. In the end, you're a human being. You're not just some book reader. You're not reading a story to people. You're telling part of who you are and part of your world. So my why is that I want to inspire hope to people, to understand how to test the human spirit. And it's not about going through chaos all the time. It's about being able to take a back seat and look at your life as a big painting and understand how did each brushstroke come into play. What is this moment in your life, or that moment, or what is your life really? And when people are what I call shoulder shruggers, which means that they're very kind of complacent about their life and they say they're fine, but to me they're not. And because they never really went after anything. And I always not to be mean, but I don't like toxic energy in my life. So if I have that kind of energy around me of uncertain mentality, I can't have that. So when I write and I think about what is my why, I think about how did I respond to certain things in my life? Who did I listen to? That's really the big thing, is who are you going to listen to, yourself or other people? And these two characters, Boone and Jacque, that's basically what they're doing for the whole series, is that they have all these adults around them, but they're not really giving them any guidance. So they have to figure everything for themselves. And to me, that's where you get the true answer to whatever hurdle you're going through. You can ask people for advice, whether it's a parent or a friend or a loved one, but in the end, you're the one that's going to answer that question. So that's what my stories really tell, is how do you answer to a situation. So yeah, that's my why.
I think that's super powerful, especially in the times that we're going through right now with COVID, and it's very easy to fall in and listen to all those that toxic messages out there, and I feel like people are more divided now than they ever have been, at least in my lifetime. And so I think that's a super powerful message. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all, but
Well, I'd like to, yeah.
yeah.
For every book that I write, I have to do research, and it's not to get some kind of like something I don't know correctly. Every author does that. Like, let's say you don't know anything about politics, but you have a politician in your book, and you research that and you talk to people. Me, it's more I research people. So for the first book, I researched foster children, because Jack, or Jacques, because it's spelled the French way, he's a kid that was fostered into a rich British family. So I interviewed two people that were foster children and asked them about their experience and what was it like being in the system and being in the family. And sometimes it was positive and sometimes it was negative. So you're asking about COVID, right?
Mm.
Well, for COVID, what this book really does in terms of the world we're in now, it really comes down to how much free time do you have and what happens to your brain during that free time. Because for me, I think it was 2 years ago, I was off work for a year and a half because of an ankle injury. And because of that, I had a lot of time to think. I couldn't go anywhere. I was literally on the couch. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I don't have any money. So because of that kind of like cornered feeling and feeling like you can't do anything, it really forced me to rewire my brain and ask myself, what do I want to do with my life? What have I been doing? Have I been staying in one spot? Is this what I've been doing? Have I put myself in a bubble that I just couldn't see? And that's what it feels like for a lot of people that aren't working, is, you're stuck in your house all day and you're kind of just going insane because you're used to keeping yourself busy. So your brain has now so much time to think that it kind of drives itself insane. When this is going to be a bit dark, but when I've heard about people taking their own lives because of COVID, because they just couldn't handle it, it really hurt, because it shows that people are so used to being preoccupied mentally, whether it's through filling your head with garbage shows on television or Netflix, or just your lifestyle or whatever, to have a break from that and really do some self-reflection. It really forces you to evaluate yourself. But I do that every day, whether it is COVID or not. So that's why, not to brag, but I have a level head, because I'm always confronting myself. Not because I doubt myself, but because I don't like to be stuck in an emotional static situation where I can't get myself out of a funk. And that's always a pain if it goes on for days, and then you kind of just slowly disintegrate after that. But if you ask yourself, why do I feel this way? What am I missing in my life that's causing me to stay in this state of mind? So what this book really teaches you in terms of feeling stuck, because these kids feel stuck. Boone feels stuck because he lives in this middle class home where his father is a drunk and his mother is neglectful. So he kind of is by himself, aside from having his best friend, Jack. Where Jack gets even worse because he's in a home where nothing belongs to him. Everything is given to him. It may sound nice, you don't have to pay for anything, but it's nothing he wants. Even though he's living with a rich family, he's being given things that you would find at a clothing bank. So feeling stuck is really what this book kind of correlates with pandemic. And I've actually got this book out to the UK, actually, and one of those people told me that it's a really gripping book that kept her occupied during the pandemic. And that's what I want my books to be, is something that engages you in a good way. My first two novels were very dark because I was in a very dark place mentally. And it's because I didn't change my mindset on life back then. But I realized, when I read a book, if it's nothing but negativity, nothing but darkness, I don't want to read this. There's supposed to be a balance between dark and light. That's what really happens to people, or hopefully during COVID, is understanding what light is missing in your life? What happiness is missing in your life? Is it your fault? Is it someone else's fault? Are you pointing the finger at other people, yourself? And then maybe that's just me. I'm a very emotionally transparent person, so I think about this stuff all the time. And to me, that's a healthy thing, to be okay with having feelings. And this is a little bit sidetracking, but I kind of break the norm of male toxicity, where these boys are okay with expressing themselves emotionally, where typically a male writer will write boys as tough and kind of stupid in terms of emotions. I do the opposite here. Right from they're like, what, 10, 11 years old. And they're already kind of maturing because there's no one there to stop them. There's no one there to judge them on how they express themselves. And that's what, if I get young readers for this, I want them to realize that just because other boys your age say you're a sissy for crying doesn't mean that you are one. So
I think, yeah, there's so many good things there and so many ways I can take it. But, for me personally, I have a really hard time expressing my emotions. And it sounds like you have, at least some tactics that you can help, get out of those funks, as you say. Can you describe, like, if you're in a funk, is there a way that you can surpass that or get out of that, or kind of alter your state of mind?
this is something I did only because no one could hear me. um, because there's so much acreage at the zoo. There are some hiding spots. So when I was first trying to uncork myself emotionally, I would go all the way in the back somewhere and I would just scream my head off until it hurt. And then I felt better. But it wasn't like an end all be all. It was just me holding on to something for too long and I had to just get it out. And since then, slowly but surely, I was able to be okay with anything that would be considered sensitive, where people look at you like, "Can you calm down?" It's like, no, I have to get this out now so I can be calm later. And I think that's really it. It's when you feel low, don't wait. Don't wait to ask someone for help. But at the same time, don't be afraid to ask for it. It's okay to handle it yourself at first when you have the chance. But if you feel that you can't do it on your own, then ask for help. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It can just be a friend. If you just need someone to listen to you, that's enough. Because really, that's all we want. We just want someone to listen to us. And honestly, it shouldn't be a parent, because a parent will tell you what to do, or
Yeah.
a friend, really, whether it's a close friend or not, they're just there. They're just there to listen to you. If they have something to say, they'll say it. But I'd rather be the one asking for them to say something, because I don't need advice. And I think that was my problem, is that whenever I would vent to someone, they would tell me what to do. And like, I'm not asking you to tell me what to do. I just want you to listen. It might not resolve how I feel right away, but if I go home after I've talked to you for an hour or however long I need to, then I feel better. And that's the kind of contrast you see between the characters, where Jacque is more sensitive and Boone is more the stereotypical kind of kid, but it doesn't stay that long. They kind of feed off of each other in terms of energy and personality. And that's really what it is in terms of getting out of funk. It's not talking to someone that's just like you or going about your own issues the same way. It's asking yourself, well, why do I still feel this way? Am I just going about it wrong? Or are they not trying enough ways? So that's basically how I do it.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice there. Going back, so you mentioned that you weren't sure about your path and whether you can be a director, a cook. Was there like a eureka moment where you're like, I need to be a writer?
Yeah. After I think a year after my associate's degree in creative writing, I was a personal trainer for a year, and that didn't work. I'm not. You have to be you have to be a born salesman to be able to be a personal trainer and be able to feed yourself. But after that, I almost completed a children's book with a friend, but we had opposing processes where she was backwards. She wanted to look at statistics and see where can the book go in terms of money. She's like, well, I don't want to do the book if it doesn't make top 10 in Amazon. It's like, we haven't done the artwork yet. We haven't really gone through enough to be able to even know who's going to read this. So when I was talking about this with her, and I realized that, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not educated enough to really say that I know better than her. I just know that I think differently. And that's not enough. That's not really credible. I wanted to be credible. That's why I went back to school. And the reason why I was inspired to go back to school is because I realized that, when her and I were putting this together, we were coming up with a message. It wasn't just some fun kids book. We actually had a meaning behind it. And when I realized that we're trying to say something, I wanted to say something for myself. So that's why I went back to school at Kwantlen Polytechnic University. And I was really hoping they had a master's program, but they don't. Not many universities have one. I did apply to the master's for UBC, but when they told me that there's no guarantee of work after, I was like, I don't want to spend 30 grand of tuition money with no guarantee. That's insane. But that's really what reignited my flame. But it's been a tough time since then, because I think 2 years before that, 5 years ago, my mom passed away. And this is going to sound a bit rushed, but 4 days after she passed away, that's when I went to do a fast track program to be a personal trainer. And maybe it was her passing, but since then, I was always searching for some kind of incentive to get back into writing. But when I realized that, it shouldn't take a loved one's passing for you to do something with your life. That always drove me nuts when I see these like inspirational stories of people that got their life together after someone passed away. It's like, well, why didn't you do that before? Why did it take a tragedy for you to do something? And I didn't want that to be the reason why I became a writer or wanted to. That's not, how can I put this? It's not concrete enough to be a reason. It has to be your reason, not because of something that happened to you. But what does being an artist, not a writer, what does being an artist mean to you? Because in the end, you're not just being a storyteller, you're using some kind of art form to say something about yourself because it means something to you. It's not just you hoping someone will like what you have to offer, but that through your work, you will have made a connection with someone. And that's the other part of my why as a writer, is I want to connect with people. I want people to feel like they can connect with something, even if it's just one scene. If there's like a B character that is going through a situation that relates to someone that's reading the book, I've won. Even if they can't relate to the main characters, that's okay. They don't have to. Someone could be reading a Harry Potter novel and could connect with someone that's not really the main focus. And that's good. That means a writer did their job. The whole point of writing is for a reader to be like, oh, that's awesome. I like that. So, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the children's story and what the message behind the story was?
If I remember, it's about, or loosely based on Amelia Earhart, the first. She's the first female airplane flyer, right?
Pilot, yeah.
Pilot, yeah. It was something like that. We took this. It was one of the creatures. It was one of those. I wish I remember this. It's kind of embarrassing. Um, it was kind of like a flying squirrel.
Mm.
It was one of those like webbed creatures. Anyway, it was something like that where we took this kind of strong female character and then made it kind of kiddie
Mm.
kind of thing, and we had these other characters that helped her along the way. So it's kind of like a point A to point B of us doing all this research about this person in real life, and then kind of translating that into the book. And I think the message was not about the female. Female is the future. I'm sorry for laughing, but I always found that kind of it should be humans is the future.
Mm.
The whole equality thing. But that wasn't the message. It was just the whole perseverance thing. That was really it. And I think that's the main subject that really kind of really engaged me to keep writing. So perseverance. That was really the focus.
And can you tell us a little bit about the research that you do for your books?
So I never did research actually before I did this series. I always just went by whatever came into my head, and that's okay. I mean, that's what I'm doing for the third installment, but I still focus on structure and everything. But when it comes to research, it's not just about textbook material, but people as well, because in the end, that's who is going to be in your book. So, like I said, I researched basically the basic Canadian system of fostering, and then I interviewed one of my friend's father, and then I think that's the only research I did. Sorry, I researched classism in England
Mm.
and Cockney slang. Yeah,
What
because
did you find? What do you have any good expressions that you can use? No?
I mean, there's the insults like twat and uh, blimey,
Um,
the typical ones that everyone knows. Um, there is, they have this way of saying anyway. Instead of anyway, they say any road up.
oh,
And
interesting.
even my editor is like, "What does this mean?" I'm like, "Yeah." um, and then like when you hear about like taking the piss, I thought
Mm.
that was funny too. But it was really me just making sure I'm not taking it lightly. It's
Mm.
not just me saying, I know what this means. It's me making sure it's accurate so that if someone from London were to read it, they would understand what that slang means. I didn't want to just do some quick Google search and then just slap it in. I made that mistake with one of the first two books where I researched Russian, and one of my Russian friends is like, this is wrong, right? I'm like, what? So that's why research is important and making sure you understand the credibility of the source. And actually, I really learned that a year ago. I did one semester for library information technology. And when I did that, they really taught me about like the importance of what's in the catalog of that database. Because if there's nothing that's peer reviewed or written by someone with credibility, there's no understanding how credible is that source. Google is a one keyword search database, so it's really random. There's no telling how credible that source is.
What, Google is
But for,
not credible? What?
um, for the second book that's going to be out in October, I researched autism.
Mm.
Uh, I already had an autism. Sorry, no one. They don't like when you say autistic and then person first. Sorry, it's person first and then disability.
Mm.
So there is a child with autism in the first book. So when I did that, he was kind of a quiet character. I didn't do much research for the first one. He was just kind of helping the characters along and their character arc. Um, but in the second book, he becomes not the focus, but the kind of the end goal for the characters to find him.
Mm.
So I researched autism. I even followed groups on Facebook, and I I interviewed a parent that has a children actually with autism, and I just wanted to understand first off the physical limitations, the cognitive limitations, and what she essentially said is that it's not that they're different or that they have limitations, is that they have a different operating system in their brain. It doesn't mean that they're limited in terms of social cues. They just have a different way of processing things.
Hmm.
So, for example, if they talk to you, they can't make direct eye contact. And actually, I learned that at work. There was this young girl who was working in the family farm, and when she was talking to you, especially when she was upset, she couldn't look you in the eye. And it's not them being shy, it's just how their brain works. And when they get upset, because they can't express themselves like a neurotypical person, is very hard for them. That's why they get physical, because they have a very hard time processing feelings. They still have them. You can tell when they're upset. It's very clear. So I even went on YouTube, and what I thought was interesting that I found is that there was these children with autism that used the virtual reality software to show people what it's like to have autism. So when I saw that and I saw the show Atypical, it really struck me. That feeling of no one knowing how you're feeling and how you see the world. And that's why I felt connected to that, because I feel like no one understands how I see things, and that when I show or tell people how I see things, they get really confused or just don't understand why I think that way. And so that's why I wanted a character with autism, because I wanted to show the different ways of processing things.
Hmm. And you're quite an accomplished poet as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your poetry and
I didn't
maybe
know it was that accomplished. uh,
and maybe some where you get inspired for your poetry as well?
Poetry is all personal to me. I
Mhm.
don't really do research for that. That's kind of like something I do in the morning if I really need to. Uh, I took 4 classes in university. One was form poetry. 2 were kind of like a workshop, so it was really all freestyle if I wanted to. And I don't remember the fourth one, but essentially it was my choice. Uh, what I love about poetry is that it focuses you to work on what I call minimalist writing.
Mm.
What's really interesting about minimalist writing is that it forces you to have not just a good flow, but good meaning within a short amount of space. So when I do that more often, it forces me to translate that into my novel writing, so that when I write a sentence, it's all about making each word very kind of sing-song kind of way. When you read a good book, and this is why Harry Potter is so popular, is that it's so engaging and comfortable to read. There may be some new words you might not know, especially if you're a young kid, um, but there's this very kind of ebb and flow kind to it, and that's what poetry is to me. And it's about, well, all forms of writing is the truth within the lie. It may not be happening in reality, but there is some truth to it. So in terms of what inspired me, really it's just whatever I'm feeling at that moment. Some people think that my poetry is too dark. I'm like, well, you have dark days, don't you? And I'm just okay with expressing it. I don't care if everyone's turned off by it. I like it. There's a poem I wrote called Boil, and people thought that was extreme. I'm like, well, that's just how my head works. That's why Stephen King books don't scare me.
So you mentioned a little bit about your first 2 books. You came from a film background.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell us a little bit about that process and how you went from writing for film to writing for novels?
I didn't quite stop, actually. I mean, I did it for a while, uh, but the main reason I transitioned from film to novel is it was just too competitive for me.
Mm.
I didn't like the idea of ha- of working with other artists. I mean, I worked with a director twice, and it was awful because essentially it came down to him wanting his story. I'm like, I don't mind rewriting it for you if there's something you don't like, but the whole idea is that you hire me to write a story, and then you make your little tweaks here and there visually, and that then is your vision, and that's fine. I understand that. It's your project. I'm just here to help you. But he wanted me to keep rewriting it until it was something that he liked. It's like, well, if you don't like what I originally wrote, then why am I still here? So really, it's a patience thing. That's the thing about screenwriting or the film industry, really, is that if you don't know anybody, don't bother, or at least try to find social events that will kind of encourage you to connect with other people, not to get work, but to understand the industry and how people think and how difficult it is for you to find work and what is it that's actually selling, what can you sell that is valuable. And honestly, to me, if you don't know storytelling before you learn the craft of screenwriting, then there's no point. Because the whole point, especially now, because the industry is getting real picky, uh, you have to have something concrete and unique. And in order to have that, you have to have a lot of practice and spend your own money doing your own little projects and eventually build enough of a resume to show whether it's a small time director or a big time director that you have something to offer. Because if you just have a piece of paper, that's nothing to them. They probably get hundreds of those and just do away with them. And that's why I stopped, because I'd rather have something that is set in stone that I can put out there, and then maybe in time, a producer will see something in me and say, "This guy is he's got something," and then it kind of happens from there. I mean, the writer for The Martian, um, he did that all by himself, through blog. Before he wrote the book, he actually did each chapter on a blog site, and then these actual scientists and stuff would correct him on his uh, his scientific terminology, and then he would rewrite that chapter with that knowledge. And then they said, I'm sick of reading your book on a blog site. Can you put it onto one e-file? And when he did, they said, okay, that's good, but can you put it on Amazon or something? And he did, but for $1. And then he started really picking it up. And then by chance, a film producer saw that, and then it kind of just unraveled from there. So really, it's about taking your time and being okay with that. That's the biggest lesson I got from school, especially my business of writing class, where the teacher really bridged the gap between the academic and real world, where doesn't matter how talented you are as a writer or even as an artist, no one knows who you are. And no one will know who you are for a few years. And that's okay. You don't know when you're going to succeed or if you will. And you have to be okay with that reality. And to keep plugging away, regardless of what your future is going to be as an artist. Because it's not about making money or getting validation from people. It's about self-validation and what your art means to you. And hopefully what means to you will mean something to someone else, whether that's an artist or a reader or a moviegoer or whatever. And, no one's going to really value who you are as a person and as an artist if you don't do that yourself.
Do you have a favorite book or a book that you like to gift a lot?
To gift,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's this one. I like to gift the Sadleton Secret, the first one. For example, actually, just before this, before we started talking, I saw for Indigo Langley there is one copy left, and I was excited about that. So I did a little contest for on my Facebook page, and I said, whoever buys the last copy and show me a picture of you buying it in the store, I will give you a free copy of the next book and sign both. So to me, it's one or two. To me, gifting one or two copies of a book is enough. You can't just give your money away, but you have to give a little bit of incentive to get people excited. People like free stuff. So I'll do that. If I do a book launch, I don't do free copies unless I really feel that it's important to do, or if it's a big crowd, and it hasn't happened yet. But if I get a big crowd, maybe I'll do like a raffle or something, and there'll be like a gift card or something like that. Because when you do a book launch, it's not just about you saying, "Here's my book." It's more like, "This is who I am. Let's have some fun." Right? You can't be very literal about everything. That's boring. So you have to kind of create some excitement, right? So that's my process.
Awesome. Well, let's cap it off there, Andre. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
On Facebook, you can write A.G Flitcher, which is my pen name and Facebook page for author. You can also reach me on Amazon. I think I'm on Amazon Central for the Author Central page. If you do reach me on my Facebook page, you can ask me for my email if you had a personal question. I am also on Instagram at Great Coffee Equals Focus. Everyone loves that one.
That's a great handle.
Yeah. And that's it. That's it for reaching.
Perfect. Well, Andre, thank you so much for being on the show and for taking the time to talk to me today. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me. All right. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Publishing for Profit. Please like and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.